Opinions are cheap and proof is gold. I'm Mark Huber, and this is The Proof Point, a show from UserEvidence that helps go-to-market teams find ideas, get frameworks, and swap tactics. In 2025, every B2B marketer needs to be focused on one thing: building trust. So I went to the toughest industry to pull it off, cybersecurity, and talked to 6 of the best B2B marketing leaders to learn how they're doing it. On today's episode of The Proof Point, I'm joined by Chris Singlemann, Senior Manager of Demand Generation at Prelude. Chris and I talked about how his team prioritizes transparency and authenticity in all of their marketing. From ungated content to clear use case-based product demos, they built a strategy that reduces friction and earns trust, even when it doesn't directly impact metrics like leads and conversions. Enjoy. I'm pumped to ask this question because I have no idea where it's going to go, but you know Kaylee Edmondson, who's one of our marketing advisors, very, very well. So what is your best Kaylee story that you can share that might embarrass her a little bit, but...
Well, I don't know if it'll embarrass her, but Kaylee is a great marketer, possibly one of the best I've ever met. She joined on with my previous company as an advisor as well, and immediately hitting the ground running, first get together in New York, we were after hours spending and just okay, and what's the conversion rate between this channel and this channel?
She's pulled that on me.
You gotta slow down just a little bit. I barely know that answer, and so it was great to meet someone who's just right down to brass tacks, right down to plugging gaps and making everything work. So Kaylee's great to work with.
I love it. So you just told me that you were not working at, or I guess haven't always worked at cyber companies. I imagine it's somewhat of a steep learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Definitely. I think coming in to cyber companies after being at agency space, universities previously, it was a very significant learning curve. You're talking about, I was selling MarTech and services.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So yes,
entirely different game. Folks are much more skeptical. They don't always have the endless budgets that come with spending marketing dollars. We need to increase revenue, so spend more on marketing or whatever it may be. And they're really practical and a lot of cases abstract use cases. How do you become more secure? Well, there's 1,000 different ways that you can go off and do that. And then beyond that, simply again, I used to sell software that helped you generate more MQLs. Now I'm helping you sell software that prevents credential dumping, which I'm still figuring out what that is.
Yeah, okay. Well, you might have to talk to me like I'm 5
Fair
for the rest of this episode. So then you're at ThoroughPass, and then your current company now is, I think, a little bit more early stage compared to ThoroughPass. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah, we raised our Series A about a year ago, and very different. It's ThoroughPass information security, and we're more in kind of the true cyber detection and response, security control validation.
So you raised the Series A, and in your role in demand gen, did you just get hit up like crazy with people trying to sell you stuff?
Every agency wants to work with me. It's awesome. I'm super important. Yep. I own all the budget. It's great.
So you're in a demand gen role. How big is the marketing team right now? Am I looking at the marketing team?
You're looking at the marketing team, yeah.
So what are some of and I can relate, I was a team of 1 for my first 7 to 8 months at UserEvidence. So what are some of the things that you're experiencing right now as a marketing team of 1 at an early stage company?
I think the biggest thing, and I talked to Kaylee about this, is the concept of, when you're figuring out product market fit, marketing is a lot of highs and lows in terms of what are the campaigns that we're working on? What's the goal of this campaign? I'm coming from later stage organizations where it's get meetings, book revenue. Now it's okay, we want to get signal. We want to get meetings with different kinds of people, and your strategy changes. I think I mentioned when we were talking before this, it's just you pivot a lot. You pivot very quickly, and used to that with startups and whatnot, but it's also the product can pivot as the market changes, as you get different feedback from prospects and POVs and customers. It's a bit of a roller coaster. So, the day-to-day tasks change pretty frequently. We've updated the website, I don't know, how many times in the last 6 months. So a lot of it's website, but then it's okay, how do we get this campaign to market? And I characterize them more as sprints than acting on anything over the course of a year. How much information can we collect in a pretty short amount of time?
So how do you run those sprints? Now I'm curious. My little marketing brain never shuts off.
Yeah, we honestly follow kind of the software development methodology. At least when we had a couple folks on the team, it's been what can we accomplish in the next 2-week period, and then the following 2 weeks is measuring and acting on the previous week's information. So okay, we're bringing a new campaign to market. We get that done in that 2-week sprint, whether it's new landing page, new ad copy, et cetera. How are we going back and looking at the stuff that we were just running and using that to inform future development cycles?
Did you have to sell that idea to your boss, or how did that go out?
No, it was very much I came from an agency space, so it was very much hey, you're used to project management. You had to manage a lot of clients, so very much pulling from methodologies that I've used in the past to like balance a lot of different priorities. And honestly, it's super helpful to like be able to focus on just the one brand and have that kind of sprint methodology applied.
Love it. So one of the things that we were talking about is you are trying to lead with transparency and really trying to build trust through just authenticity. So how do you do that at a cyber company?
It kind of goes back to like the original question of like, what was the main thing I noticed? You know, coming from an organization where we were largely selling services or working at an agency and whatnot, now it's like there's a platform here, and the platform contributes a specific degree of value, helps you accomplish specific tasks. My philosophy and the marketing team's philosophy has always been, how do we get that into market as clearly as possible? You know, if we're dealing with skeptical buyers and people who don't always, they don't always trust, like they're being marketed to, they're getting hit up by
I'm giving a talk on this exact topic in about an hour now.
Everyone's
so
hitting them up. They want to be sold to, like they don't want to be sold to. They want to know that whatever they're putting their money into is actually going to work. And so our goal has always been, as many times as the product has pivoted and we've introduced new capabilities, it's a very fast moving engineering team. We create a new video for all the capabilities that are there. We're constantly updating a guided product tour. You know, Story Lane is here, Nevadic is here. Those tools are immensely valuable to what we've been going to market with. And I think the fundamental thing that we really applied is we don't gate any of that information. Like a lot of folks who go out to a software company, and I think it's especially true even on like the MarTech side, where you got to fill out a form before you see the recorded demo. Or you, like, listen, I built that. I built a recorded demo video and we gated it behind a form, and it was a huge lead gen for us. Now we're much earlier stage. We don't have that built-in trust with the market. We have to earn the right to do more and earn the right to sell to you. Our biggest thing is, even if it takes a lot of time or we leverage agency partners, that's been where the investment goes. Really high quality product videos that here's a use case. It's not like, oh, it's the best thing in the universe. It's like, okay, you need to prevent this thing. We're going to walk you through a flow that shows you how you do that end to end. And then the guided interactive demo that lets folks get right into it. And they don't have to fill out a form to do that. It's very much like, and so a lot of people I've had conversations like, the lead gen hasn't been there. Okay, well, gate that demo gate the gated demo. I don't want to do that. It's the reality is we get on sales conversations and they'll say, like, it was so awesome to see the product before I had this conversation. So we might not end up with as many conversations as we'd like, but the reality is they're more informed. Some people might have self-disqualified that we might not have wanted to have talked to begin with. Exactly. So it's been a really productive means for us to generate qualified conversations that mention the fact that it was awesome to see the demo, awesome to see the product. I know what I'm expecting. And in an ideal world, you could create an account and, kind of combine that PLG and sales-led motion. But, that's future state. But I think the role that we've been going with is, can we create new videos for the capabilities we're putting into market and articulate the value add that it means for the end user, not just it's some great product that's going to alleviate all your concerns.
So the ungated approach to marketing, which I love, huge fan of, how did you sell that to your boss and really the leadership team?
One of the reasons I joined was it was ungated already. So we had an ungated
You are
ecosystem.
The luckiest marketer.
It was great, I've heard that a lot. I came in with like a brand new CRM, like new RevOps. It's been awesome to build it. So it's the same concept where we were already ungated, and the question was posed to me, leading demand, do you want to change that? I was like, maybe someday we'll have forms on some things. Like we do a premium survey asset, we invest a lot of dollars in that, whatever, perhaps we would gate that. But the reality of the situation is we have these assets, people are engaging with them, and it creates quality conversations. We're not going to change that.
So I got to ask, how do you measure all of that then?
Well,
and I'm asking for a friend, aka myself.
Sure. Well, I am giving a talk while we're here at Cyber Marketing Con on attribution. And I think like one of the things that I've often said to folks, especially building attribution programs in HubSpot and whatnot, is you want to measure for the 80%. A lot of attribution programs fail because you're trying to answer like, what influencer did this person see? What LinkedIn post did they question? It's like, the reality is if you can speak to a bulk of what you're doing, the highly strategic initiatives, that's the goal. So our gated or our interactive demos are on website pages. We're using tools like Koala and RB2B to understand like where are those companies coming from. And it's linking the tools. We're still early stage. We don't have a robust attribution program, but we have enough to help us understand like, okay, we're generating intent from these accounts. They're on the gated demo page. Story Lane is providing us with those insights. It's not answering every single question, but at the scale that we're at right now, it's telling us enough that this is something that we want to go off and do. And I think part of the challenge that I've fallen into in the past, other marketers fall into, is we need to understand exactly who this was and when they came and when we're going to talk to them. It's like, if we put enough out into the market, they will come.
So I've fallen in that exact scenario before, and I'm sure plenty of people who will be listening also have as well. So what would be the best advice that you can share for marketers who are probably getting way too in the weeds with attribution and just questions that they might not know how to answer?
Yeah, and we'll talk about this in the chat as well. The concept is like you want to answer people to 3 questions: demand capture, demand generation, and the deal creation. So when did they first hear about you? I'm a huge advocate for how did you hear about us on every form. If you're worried about more form fields, don't be worried about that one.
Yeah.
It is immensely valuable to get the software telling you where they're coming from and the person telling you how they heard about us. That's what starts to justify the podcast that you sit on or the ad that you run in a place where you forgot to throw UTMs on it or whatever it may be.
Which I do all the time.
Exactly. And then you have the software that's telling you, okay, at this particular moment, you captured them from this paid ad. But they heard about you on that podcast. If you can answer those 2 questions first and foremost, you're getting a good picture of like the high level strategic initiatives that you're putting out into market. If they're telling you, like I saw a post on LinkedIn, you don't actually have to find out exactly what post it was.
Yeah.
Like that is again, we forgot to put UTM on that post. It is, okay, this channel is working for us. If we start seeing a trend there, then maybe we want to go and ask more questions. Same thing with the concept of the deal creation. So if, in some cases, it's always going to be the same. They heard about you, they converted, and they immediately became in their buying decision. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes they come in and you nurture them over time. And so understanding where did they first hear about you? When did they actually come into your CRM or start to talk to you? And then in that cycle of being an engaged conversation, what actually brought them to that buying signal? Okay, I'm ready to have this as a POV, a conversation.
So you mentioned ads in LinkedIn, and it sounds like you're running or maybe ran thought leadership ads. So why don't you share a little bit more about that, what you learned, what worked, maybe what didn't work?
Thought leader ads have been a pivot for us, a more recent pivot. I think what we experienced firsthand was, okay, because the key of any ungated marketing strategy is retargeting. You want to be able to go out and create ads to market to that audience that's already seen you, but you never got their email. So we were finding that we don't necessarily have like the volume of traffic coming all the time to build that up at the rate that we wanted it. So we need to put cold ads out into market. And I think I fell into the trap that a lot of people do. Okay, here's a branded image and it's a headline about what the product does. And that deviated from the thing that we find is so successful. Those videos, those authentic capturing of the value of the product ads. So what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks and months is the thought leader ads. So our thought leaders, our SMEs, our founder, security researchers, writing original content on LinkedIn and then putting dollars behind that to build out the retargeting audience. We're doing all the same things that we're doing in the videos and the interactive demo. And then we're just saying like, hey, we run these POVs, we experience this. You could see the exact same thing in the video content on the site. So our goal is we're running those ads, building up a hefty retargeting audience to put those demand capture ads in front of, but also drive them to the site, see the videos, see the interactive demo.
Love that.
Yeah.
And are there specific like forms of evidence or proof points that you've been using?
Best thing we hear on any sales call is, I saw the interactive demo and that's why I booked a call. I was like, you might not have booked then, but you might have been starting a research project and we're going out for an ask or a CTM project. And we saw your demo, brought it back to the team. You were included in the group of companies that we're reviewing. We didn't hear from them right away, but now they know that we are somebody that they want to review in that process.
So now we're really going to nerd out. I've been passing through UTM parameters on the CTA in the final screen of our interactive demo, and I've been amazed. We've only had, we call it the demo ranch. We're headquartered in Jackson, so we're trying to lean into the Western roots a little bit. I've been blown away at how much attributable pipeline that we've been able to create just by way of that, and I know that there's even more that we can't attribute just because they didn't convert right away. But it's been amazing.
Exactly. And then part of that is like, okay, is the tools that you have out on your website collecting that information, like are you able to go back in a session and see, did they check out that page? And like, those are the things you can start to write workflows for and capture. But again, it's that kind of that 80%. Can I get enough information about 80% of where this person came from? And if you're seeing enough signal from like the direct conversions, the direct attributable, that's when, okay, we need to invest more in this. Like my goal for 2025 is how do we create even more product videos and more interactive tools, because
I love that.
Security leaders need to understand what's this tool actually going to do for them. The coincidence is our tool validates your security controls. They need to be able to validate that we can do what we say we're doing, and that concept of earning the right to do more. So we're an early stage company. They don't always have to give us the time of day. We can spend a lot of money to get in front of them, or we can just put the best foot, the most authentic foot forward and say, here it is all on the table, what the tool does and what we can get from it.
So by the time that this goes out, it will be long after this event has ended. So give me a little preview of what you're going to be presenting that you haven't talked about already?
So the goal is a framework, and I think coming from a HubSpot agency, I helped a lot of folks migrate over from Salesforce. Worked with a lot of people who were deeply embedded in that RevOps function, and the thing that always kept popping up was Salesforce campaigns. Salesforce campaigns are actually a great mechanism, regardless of how much you love HubSpot.
I promise you, I just said this like 3 hours ago. I said one of the only things that I miss about Salesforce is
Campaign
Salesforce
attribution.
campaigns.
It could not be simpler. It's like,
yeah.
don't want to pick teams. I work for a HubSpot agency, so obviously I've got some preferences. But that was like always my finding as well. Is like there was no easy way to translate that to HubSpot. HubSpot is very much versed in this software-based attribution world. Did you have a UTM on it?
Yep.
Was the HubSpot tracking code installed? And that's not how buyers are working today. They're not always on your website. They're on LinkedIn. They're on Reddit. They're wherever they might be. And so the goal of the talk is to understand, break down a very simple framework that you can apply for just a methodology for building one, your attribution program to begin with. Assume you have nothing. So how do you align with sales? How do you build out the mechanisms and the questions that you'll ask to define that capture, generation, deal creation? And then we'll do an experiment in HubSpot where we've actually kind of created a custom object that mirrors what we've done in Salesforce. So if there's anything that HubSpot is great at, it's being infinitely customizable.
Yeah.
And while they continue to iterate on the campaign functionality, what we did as a team was kind of break down the component parts of a Salesforce campaign, rebuild it in HubSpot, and I found a really straightforward way. We're early stage. We don't need to answer every question. It's where did you come from and what's the primary campaign source? And so we're going to discuss how you can go ahead and build something like that in your own instance.
Asking for a friend, aka me. What time is your talk? Is it tomorrow?
It's at 4:00 tomorrow.
I will be there, so you'll at least
See you
have
there?
one. No,
Yeah.
you'll probably have a bunch of people in the room if that's what you're talking
I
about.
hope so, yeah.
I was talking about using HubSpot campaigns with one of the people on our marketing team at UserEvidence, and I just wasn't sure if that...
Leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah. So it sounds like the custom object route requires a little bit of work, but it helps you in...
And to be perfectly honest, it was not that much work. The reality of Salesforce campaigns is they're very simple.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very easy to just, they touch this campaign, and then you can start to inform in Salesforce with your field customizations what that actually means to you. And I think the challenge is with a lot of HubSpot users and marketers who are data obsessed to begin with, they want to know, okay, was this first touch attribution or last touch or U-shaped, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And they're trying to answer that question before they answer the fundamental, what do we actually need to know? And so when we're thinking about attribution, it's a concept of what do you need to advocate to your boss for more budget? What do you need in your team to determine what channels are working for you? And kind of starting to waterfall from what's the least, because the worst thing you can do is throw a report in front of your CEO that says, here's the 12 tools that we're using, and this one has no attribution. All right, kill that tool.
Yeah.
It's not the data that they need. So part of the talk is, again, that framework concept of waterfalling your data to the relevant audience.
Yep. Yeah, that was something that I think I went through 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of the co-founders of UserEvidence is here, and he was asking a question that I could sense was an attribution-related question. And the easy route would have been just to share a bunch of data with him without very much context and then have him come to his own conclusions with the basic first touch model that we have with a standard, I think it's a 45-day look-back window. So I sent him all of that data, but then I exported it in a Google Sheet, and then I created a simple little pie chart that shows this is what that will tell you is working right now. But what I also did was I took all of the self-reported attribution, I threw it into ChatGPT, and then prompted it to try and match whatever they were saying to the values that we use. And it blew my mind, and I think it blew his mind, that if you put the two pie charts right next to each other, they tell a fairly different story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so the concept is you're relying, and we talk about it in the conversation, which is both of those things are highly fallible.
Yep.
Your software is going to tell you only what it sees if there's a cookie placed, and we all know where that's going.
Yep.
And the person is only going to tell you what they remember.
Yeah.
And again, which is more important? The reality is both of those things are important, because if they heard about you on a podcast ad a year ago, but clicked on your paid search ad, it means there's one, maybe probably multiple points that you're missing, unless they have some stellar memory that I don't have. And the other thing is that they don't consider that click or that Google search is how they heard about you. So those are two very different answers, and it's important to look at them both. As you're saying, that's going to inform your strategy in way more ways than either one of those would. You can't just rely on one or the other.
Yep. So you seem like a really sharp marketer. I've got a very high bar, so
that's about yourself.
I appreciate you. What is maybe the one thing that you're most excited about or curious about for marketing in 2025?
I think it ultimately comes down to, when I was at an agency, we often talked about like, how do we get around this whole GDPR thing? Like, how do we make our website compliant, but I still want to get all the cookie data? It's like, well, that's actually a good thing. It's good that people have, like, one of the things I always say, and if you're listening to this, please don't call my cell phone. I don't want to be sold to on my cell phone.
Oh my God.
I don't know how you got it. I know that one day I filled out a form and it's that, and, Bob's your uncle. But the reality is, like, there are concessions that we have to make as marketers, and that ultimately comes down to kind of the thesis of the talk, where like you're never going to know everything. And so I kind of think that we're reaching a plateau of MarTech across the board. Like, there's only so much we can build, and who knows what AI has in store. But I think it's what I'm actually really excited for is not the next tech or not the next this. It's how do we learn to maximize what we already have and feel comfortable with that. Like, we've gone through a long history of marketing and sales are disaligned. What's a MQL? No, they only want to see SQLs. What does that mean? Like, how does the tools that we have today and the information that we have today actually bring us closer together to understand, like, we're all working towards common goals? I think it was said in one of the talks this morning, pipeline. We all want more revenue. We all want more pipeline. And more tools isn't going to fix that. So I think we've reached the point of no return where there's not going to be another tool magically that fix it all.
Hear that, marketers? Yeah.
And waiting for that to come isn't going to change anything. So I think there's more and more people that are kind of buying into that concept. So it's a concept of, again, asking the right questions and being comfortable with the things that you're never going to find out and working with what you have.
Chris, I could talk for hours with you. This was awesome. Thank you for coming on the Proof Point, and thank you, Kaylee, for making this happen.
That's right. Thank you very much, Kaylee. Good to meet you.
Thanks for listening to The Proof Point. If you like what you heard during this conversation, you probably will like Evidently, my bi-weekly newsletter where I share my biggest hits and get honest about my misses as a first-time VP of marketing. You can subscribe using the link in the show notes here in this episode. The Proof Point is brought to you by UserEvidence. If you want to learn more about how our customer evidence platform can help you build trust and close deals faster, check out userevidence.com.